What's up, Guardians? I'm pretty amped to bring you this Arc Warlock build that will leave your enemies jolted and turn you into the ultimate superconductor. This build generates unlimited ionic traces, giving you nearly infinite Chaos Reach supers. But first, while you're here, smash that sub button, click that thumbs up like, ring that notification bell to keep you notified of future builds, and leave a comment below. I do respond to all comments. I also do stream at least 3 days a week on all major platforms, whether it be Twitch, Kick, or right here on YouTube. Swing by the platform of your choosing, hang out, and let's run some content together. I do play with viewers. Now, let's get into it. This build takes advantage of the recently buffed Warlock exotic leg piece, the Geomag stabilizers, that now allows you to gain super energy from ionic traces, and we'll be building into that by creating a plethora of traces, allowing you to get your Chaos Reach super in under 45 seconds. The Geomag Exotic perk, Close Enough, states that damaging targets with Chaos Reach extends its duration. Collecting ionic traces grants you energy for Chaos Reach. What this does is when collecting ionic traces, it grants you 2% super energy with Chaos Reach selected. Chaos Reach refunds 10% super energy on hit with a 0.75 second cooldown between refunds. This can increase Chaos Reach's duration by 120%. Before we get into the abilities, aspects, and fragments, let's look at the Season 22 artifact and what we can use to help amp up this build. Now, as for the first 2 columns, you can select whatever you like, depending on what type of content you are running. The bread and butter really come down to the final 3 columns. In the 3rd column, what you want to focus on is Elemental Orbs Arc. While using an Arc subclass, Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to spawn an Arc Elemental Orb. Arc Orbs can be thrown to create an Arc Explosion that jolts target it damages, which jolting targets, as you'll see when we get into the abilities, aspects, and fragments, allow you to get ionic traces. As for the 4th column, you don't have to pick overload machine guns. I picked it because I'm using a heavy machine gun for this. What I would focus on would be Elemental Fury. While stunned, champions take bonus damage from your abilities and Elemental Orb damage. So we'll be stunning champions if we're taking this to high-end content, so we'll be getting bonus damage from our abilities and those orbs that we were creating earlier. Up next, refreshing pickups. Picking up a Tangle or Elemental Orb grants you energy to your least powered ability. So this will help us get our abilities back, which will allow us to create more traces, get more kills, and get our super even faster, along with other things. Now with this, you could choose communal pickups instead of the overload heavy machine guns, which would allow you to, when you just an ally destroys or picks up your Tangle Elemental Orb, the Tangle cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds and you gain bonus damage with weapons matching your subclass for 10 seconds. So this is when you're playing with people and they always end up taking your orbs. You'll be able to get more damage from it. You'll be able to get that orb back even quicker. So this is a good option to choose. And then from the last column, the 2 that I really like to use with this is Monochromatic Maestro. Dealing elemental ability damage increases matching weapon damage, and elemental weapon damage increases matching ability damage. Bonus granted is 10% for 5 seconds. So we'll be getting a bonus damage for 5 seconds whether we're using our abilities or our weapons, because we will be using our weapons with this. Monochromatic Maestro is really, really good for that extra damage that you get. And lastly, I choose Frenzied Stack. Clicking Orb Power causes you to gain 1 temporary armor charge. So the cool thing about this is like a free stacks on stacks to where you get an armor charge from an orb, but instead of having to use that mod, you end up getting it from your artifact perk. All right, now let's get into the abilities, aspects, and fragments. Of course, we're going to be using the Chaos Reach super, which unleashes a long-range channel beam of concentrated arc energy. Sustained damage on a single target creates a jolting lightning strike at their position. It's just a really good damage super. And the fact that we're able to build into it, the fact that we're able to jolt with it, the fact that we can make it last longer, like we said before, up to 120%, it's just absolutely amazing. You can literally clear majors and bosses with this super. Up next for the abilities, I use a Healing Rift. Continuously heals you when inside. You can use an Empowering Rift if you're not staying alive, but I really do just like a Healing Rift. For your jump, you can use whatever kind of jump you like. I like to use Strafe Glide. I like to be able to strafe and fly all over the place. As for the melee, we're going to be using Ball Lightning. It fires an arc projectile forward that releases a perpendicular lightning strike after a short time. While amplified, Ball Lightning releases additional lightning strikes before detonating. And what amplified is your movement speed and weapon handling are greatly increased after sprinting for a short time. Your movement speed is further increased. Rapidly defeating targets with arc damage makes you amplified. So this is another way when you're amplified, you'll be able to do additional strikes and create more damage and get more kills. And as you'll see in a minute, create more ionic traces. And next for your grenade, the pulse grenade, a grenade that periodically damages targets within its explosion radius. I just really like this grenade. You can throw it down, it'll just keep pulsing and jolting targets, pulsing and pulsing, and just giving you a lot of damage over time. On to the aspects, Arc Soul. Cast your Rift to create an Arc Soul that fires at targets in front of you. Allies can pass through your Rift to get an Arc Soul. Your Rift charges faster when allies are near. While amplified, your Arc Souls are supercharged and gain increased fire rate. And if you haven't used it before, Arc Souls, Void Souls, Souls in general are just really good. They just give you added DPS, especially since you can pass them on to your other teammates. And actually, Arc Soul is a really, really good thing to have in the first part, the Abyss part of the ℚ𝕀𝕍 raid. It can just help you kill all those thralls and get everything out of your pathway and just clear out a lot of low-end ads. And because you'll be amplified a lot of the time, your Arc Souls will be supercharged and will fire even faster, killing more enemies. Up next, Electrostatic Mind. Defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an ionic trace. So this allows us to get ionic traces by jolting enemies, by blinding enemies. Plus, when we get those traces, collecting an ionic trace makes you amplified. And for those who don't know, an ionic trace is a bolt of pure arc energy that travels along the ground, seeking towards its creator. When picked up, ionic traces grant ability energy. So not only are we going to be getting our super back for the ionic traces, not only are we going to be replenishing our ammo, which I'll show you in a bit when I show you the weapon we use with this, but it's also going to give you ability energy. Ionic traces and the fact that we're going to be able to build lots of them is just absolutely amazing. And for those who don't know, jolted. The target is energized with destructive arc light. They take additional damage while jolted and chain lightning to nearby targets. Jolt damages causes overload champions to be stunned. So this is another way to stun overload champions. Plus, it'll chain that damage to other enemies when they're jolted. It's just absolutely amazing. It just affects everything on the battlefield. It gives you a chance to create even more ionic charges, and it gives you a chance to get amplified even more and just do massive damage and ad control and enemy control all over the battlefield. All right, let's get into the fragments. Spark of Amplitude. Rapidly defeating targets while you're amplified creates an orb of power. And we'll be amplified most of the time, so we'll be creating orbs of power constantly. And as you already know, orbs of power can do all kinds of things, whether it's rebuild your super, rebuild your abilities, give you armor charges, give you all kinds of benefits when using them. So any way you can create an orb of power is an amazing thing to use. Spark of Ions. Defeating jolted targets create ionic trace. So as you've seen before with our abilities and aspects, we're going to be jolting targets constantly. So when we kill them, we'll be creating ionic traces. Plus, like I said before, the weapon we'll be using creates ionic traces against jolted enemies as well. So you'll be getting double the amount of ionic traces, thus building your super even quicker. Up next, Spark of Shock. Your arc grenade jolts targets. As I said before, with the pulse grenade, we'll be jolting enemies. We'll be jolting enemies because of the Spark of Shock. And because it's just constantly shocking enemies and constantly spreading that arc damage and then spreading that jolt all over the place, we'll be able to create even more ionic traces when we kill enemies. And lastly, Spark of Discharge. Arc weapon final blows have a chance to create ionic trace. We'll be using an arc weapon, so that's a third way we'll be getting an ionic trace from the arc weapon that we'll be using. We'll be getting them from killing jolted targets, we'll be getting them from Spark of Discharge, and we'll be getting them from the weapon itself. This is absolutely synergistic and what makes it so quickly that you'll get your super back in 40 to 45 seconds and just demolishing anything in front of you. The exotic weapon we'll be building around is the Delicate Tomb Fusion Rifle, which if you haven't acquired it yet, you can get it from the Moments Lost to Light's kiosk in the tower. Delicate Tomb's intrinsic trait, Trader's Vessel, fires a wide horizontal spread when shot from the hip. Final blows with this weapon have a chance to generate ionic traces. Powerful foes and opposing guardians always generate ionic traces. And as we talked about with the abilities, aspects, and fragments, and the gun that I was talking about that gives you ionic traces, this is another way the gun will generate your super by building those traces. Plus, the intrinsic perk gives you another Tempest Cascade. which, collecting Ionic Trace, overcharges this weapon's next shot, jolting targets on hit, which, as we saw before, jolting targets and killing them allows you to get more Ionic Traces. Plus, the intrinsic trait creates more Ionic Traces. Plus, our gradient hub is great, more Ionic Traces. You see the theme here. We're just going to be building those traces infinitely over and over and over again. And as you can see, this gun provides amazing synergy. Plus, fun fact, the ℃𝕀𝕍𝔼 shoots 16 bolts per hip fire shot, giving you the ability to jolt and kill even more targets. Now with this build, you could also use Cold Heart or Risk Runner. Cold Heart's really good, Risk Runner is really good, but the only thing with Risk Runner is it does not jolt targets, so you won't be getting that jolt from your weapon to give you another chance to create Ionic Traces. Yet we will still be jolting enemies anyway, but it doesn't provide you that extra jolt to give you those extra traces. So while Risk Runner is really good, and you could use it with this, I would much rather use ℃𝕀𝕍 or Cold Heart, because Cold Heart's amazing as well. And as for the catalyst, it's also very synergistic with this build, which when collecting an Ionic Trace, it partially reloads the magazine from reserves. And we will be having a lot of reserves, so you'll constantly be having ammo in that magazine and not have to reload, thus giving you more abilities to jolt and kill enemies and giving you more traces, building that super even quicker. Now, as for the other weapons in this build, you can really use whatever you want as a primary, depending on what kind of constant you're going in. If you need a bow or an auto rifle to stop anti-barrier champions, you need an unstoppable, you need an overload weapon, whatever you want to choose there, you can use. The way we'll be building this is there will be very rarely that we'll be running out of ammo. And as for your stats, of course, as always, you want to try to get 100 discipline and 100 resilience. 100 resilience is what you would like first, but I know a lot of people say don't build into supers. A lot of your super and you build into intelligence. Supers are really generated by the damage you do or the amount of targets you hit, but it does reduce the base cooldown of your super. I like on this build having an intellect between 60 and 70, so we have our lower base cooldown. Plus then the traces will be making you get your super energy back even quicker, because the Geomags, I like getting that a little bit higher than normal I would for another build. Now, let's get into the armor mods. And like I always say, for your general armor mods, you can use whatever you need to use in order to get your stats the way you need them, depending on the way your armor is built. But for this, I'm using Dynamo. Reduces super cooldown while using your class ability near target. So we'll be getting those arc souls all the time. We'll be near targets when we do it. So we'll be reducing the super cooldown there as well. Also, ashes to assets. Gain super energy on grenade kills. So we'll be jolting our targets with that pulse grenade. We're also getting kills with it as well, enabling our super to come back even quicker. And in order to ensure that we're getting more special ammo, because the ℃𝕀𝕍 is a special ammo weapon, we'll be using Special Ammo Fighter. Increases the drop chance of special ammo on kill. So this will allow more bricks to drop, so you'll be constantly refilling your ammo reserves, which you'll then be refilling the magazine from Ionic Traces you're getting from all of your kills. All right, up next for your gauntlets, I like to use Momentum Transfer. Causing damage with a grenade reduces your melee cooldown, so we'll be able to use that Lightning Bolt even more every time we cause damage with grenades, and we'll be causing a lot of damage with grenades with those pulse grenades. Then up next, Firepower your grenades. Final blows create Orbs of Power, and as you already know and I stated before, Orbs of Power do a lot for you, and not only getting powers back, not only getting abilities back, sometimes healing you, doing different kinds of things. You'll be using your grenade not getting a lot of kills, so you'll be creating Orbs of Power constantly. And lastly, Impact Induction. Causing damage with a melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. So yes, we already have 100 discipline, but we constantly want that grenade cooldown to be quicker and quicker and quicker. So using our chain lightning, our ball lightning, we'll be able to get our grenade cooldown even quicker, allowing us to jolt more enemies, allowing us to kill more enemies, and keeping the cycle going. Now for this build, I am using, obviously, Charged Up, which you use almost every build. Increase the maximum number of stacks, armor charge you can carry by 1. And armor charge is really great because it allows you to do more damage, allows you to do other kinds of things, you know, get abilities back or whatever you need quicker. So Charged Up's always a must. But with this build, I'm also using Harmonic Reserves. I'm using 2 copies of that, which increases the amount of ammo you can carry for arc weapons. Multiple copies of this mod stack and improve its effects. So because we're running 2 of them, we'll be having even more reserves to pull from when the ℃𝕀𝕍 refills itself when we gain an Ionic Trace. Plus, makes it to where we don't run out of special ammo and rarely run out of special ammo because we'll have a lot more to use. Plus, we'll be getting a lot more from bricks from the Ammo Finder mod. Now, if you're finding yourself having a hard time staying alive, you can use any resistance here that you want, whether it be arc resistance, harmonic resistance, stasis resistance, depending on what kind of content you're in. So if you don't feel like you're needing that extra reserve, you can always switch over to a resistance mod if you choose. Up next, the leg armor mods. Now, a lot of times you'll see me use stacks on stacks, but we don't need to use that because we get a 3 stacks on stacks from our artifact mod. So if we're not using this with that artifact mod, or we're not using that artifact, it's a different season, you could put stacks and stacks instead, but I'm using elemental charge. Collecting a fire sprite, ionic trace, stasis shard, or void breach, or destroying a strand tangle has an escalating chance to give you an armor charge. Since we're getting so many ionic traces, we'll be constantly getting armor charges. You will definitely get armor charges from this, and we'll be just creating so many, it just allows you to use a little bit less energy to place in something else. Up next, Innervation reduces grenade cooldown each time you pick up an orb of power. So again, we'll be creating orbs of power from our grenade, and then our orbs of power we create will give us our grenade back quicker. Once again, perfect synergy here with this build. And I like to use the arc weapon surge. Your arc weapons gain a small bonus to damage while you have an armor charge. Your armor charge now decays over time. So we'll be getting so many armor charges from ionic traces from our orbs of power, we'll be having full armor charge. Yes, the armor charge will be decaying over time, but we'll be able to constantly replenish this, and this surge allows us to do even more damage, thus getting those ionic traces quicker. All right, as for your Warlock bond mods, what we're going to be using on here is Bomb. It reduces grenade cooldown when using your class ability. So again, we want those grenades to stay up constantly. We can constantly be jolting enemies, killing enemies with that pulse grenade. When we're using our Arc Soul, our rift with our Arc Soul, we'll be getting our grenade back quicker. Up next, I'm using Time Dilation. Your decaying armor charge has a longer duration. So just for some reason you're not getting that armor charge, this will allow those decaying armor charges because you have a weapon surge mod on from decaying as quickly. Now instead of this, you could use something like Powerful Attraction. So when you use your class ability, you're able to get those surrounding orbs. But in actuality, I think Time Dilation is a bigger deal here because you're able to keep that arc surge up longer. And lastly, the Reaper mod. After using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an orb of power. So we'll be using our class ability to heal and create that Arc Soul. Then our next weapon final blow will create orb of power, which we saw before. We'll get our grenade back quicker, get our super back quicker. You know the deal. You know what I'm saying. You see what it's doing. You see what this build's doing. You see the synergy that all of this creates and how this just turns into an absolute electrifying monster. And that's it, everyone. That is the build. It's shocking how good this build really is, and will have you dominating in all forms of content, erasing everything in your path. The dim link for this loadout is in the description below. Leave a message in the comments. Tell me what you think of this build, if you tried it, or what build you would like to see next. Spoiler alert, our next build is a viewer requested build for a Stasis Titan, which is absolutely dominating in all aspects of Destiny. And again, while you're here, hit that subscribe button, that thumbs up like, ring the notification bell, and check me out live on the platforms below. I hope to see you there. Come hang out. Let's play some games together. Until then, feel free to click on one of the videos on screen right now for more fire builds and other content. It's been a blast. It's your boy Old Man Sim out. Peace.